My Jiffy Cornbread with buttermilk recipe is easy and delicious. Since it's moist, soft, and tender, it's one of the best versions of the old-fashioned southern side dish. Let's go over the ingredients. For an 8x8 pan of cornbread, you will need one 8.5 ounce box of Jiffy corn muffin mix, to which you'll add 1/3 cup of buttermilk, 80 grams, 2 tablespoons of butter, I'm using unsalted, 2 tablespoons of oil, I'm using canola, and 1 large egg. My 8x8 casserole dish is already buttered. My oven is preheated to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, so I'm ready to get started. The first step is melting the butter, so I'm going to do that in the microwave, and then I'll bring you back. My butter is now melted, so I can get started. Honestly, all we have to do is simply just mix the ingredients together in this bowl, pour the batter into the greased 8x8 dish, and then put it into the oven. I don't think the order matters really, just as long as you add the egg last. I'll explain why. So I'm just gonna break up some of these clumps real fast. Not all of them, but just maybe the biggest ones. Now with the buttermilk, like I said, 1/3 cup. I am using low-fat buttermilk, but you can use fat-free or full-fat, whatever you want. Two tablespoons of melted butter and canola oil. Like I said, I'm using unsalted butter, and 2 tablespoons of canola oil. I'm going to get this started. Mix it in, okay. Now I'm going to add the egg. And I added the egg last because melted butter is obviously hot and I didn't want to accidentally cook it. So whenever you are mixing eggs into something that's hot, such as a batter that is melted butter, I would add everything before the eggs because it's going to give the butter time to cool down. So just make sure that you stir it thoroughly. And I've noticed cornbread batter, it tends to not incorporate fully at the bottom. So make sure you have a long spoon and that you're stirring deep down into the bowl so that everything is combined. And now that the batter is well combined, I'm gonna just pour it into my 8x8 casserole dish. Like I said, this is buttered. You could spray it to whatever you want. And then once the batter is in, I'm just gonna spread it out evenly. And now I'm gonna put my cornbread into a 400 degree Fahrenheit oven uncovered. I'll let you know for how long. I just pulled my Jiffy cornbread made with buttermilk instead of regular milk out of the oven. It was in at 350 degrees Fahrenheit, uncovered for 20 minutes. 20. It's perfectly golden brown. It looks and smells delicious. As you can see, the cornbread came out perfectly golden brown, very similar to the other versions I've made here on my channel, except that it didn't quite rise as much and it browned a bit more around the edges. I was very curious how it would taste, so after letting it cool down for about 15 to 20 minutes, I gave it a try. And when I cut the first slice and took the first bite, I knew that my Jiffy cornbread with buttermilk recipe was a big success because it was absolutely delicious. First, let's talk about the flavor. Like all other Jiffy cornbread recipes, this one had the sweet, corny flavor that you'd expect. The bit of melted butter enhanced the flavor without overpowering it, letting the main taste, like I said, that sweet corn, come through loud and clear. Honestly, I didn't think the buttermilk really changed the flavor. It was more about the texture. Compared to making Jiffy with just plain milk, the buttermilk version was softer and more tender. While it was moister as well, I honestly felt like it wasn't quite as moist as the versions I made with sour cream or Greek yogurt, the extra browning around the side indicating that this was definitely a little bit drier. I also noticed that it didn't seem to rise as much as the other two versions. Maybe because the batter was thinner, it was less dense, or maybe because it was actually overly acidic. That's not really a huge deal, just something I wanted to point out. So if you want a thicker piece of cornbread, this version probably wouldn't be for you, but if you're okay with a thinner, flatter one, then this one is fine. Additionally, this buttermilk version was a bit crumblier, probably because there was less moisture, giving it a texture more similar to that of old-fashioned cast iron skillet cornbread. This isn't necessarily a bad thing. It would be perfect for crumbling into a bowl of beans or chili, but if you're looking for a super moist version, then I'd recommend adding some sour cream or Greek yogurt. My pickiness aside, I was still very pleased with how my old-fashioned Jiffy cornbread with buttermilk recipe turned out. It tasted great and definitely wasn't dry, just a bit crumblier and not as moist as the other versions I made here on my channel. Although I thought this was really good, there are a few tweaks you might want to make to the recipe. For example, I think adding a half a cup of Greek yogurt or sour cream to this would be an interesting modification. It would probably make it a lot moister, kind of similar to the other versions I made here on my channel. Or you could even add one 14.7 ounce can of creamed corn. That would sure amp up the flavor and make it moister. Also, like I said earlier, the texture of this buttermilk version reminded me of old-fashioned skillet cornbread. So instead of making it in an 8x8 casserole dish, you might want to try making it in a cast iron skillet. For a standard 10-inch skillet, I would recommend using 2 boxes. So take this recipe as it's written and just double it. But honestly, if you made this recipe exactly as I did, I know you'll love it. These are just some ideas that I have as to how you could change it if you wanted to. This recipe was super easy to make. It would be a great side dish for beans, chili, or maybe even greens. So if you're looking for a new way to make Jiffy cornbread, try making it with some buttermilk. If you try it, I know you'll like it. As always, thanks for watching. See you next time.